Hi, I'm Mrs. Appleton, and I teach science and social studies at 5th grade after teaching 3rd grade for a lot of years. And today I'm going to read The Story of Ferdinand by Monroe Leaf, and the drawings are by Robert Lawson. Once upon a time in Spain, there was a little bull, and his name was Ferdinand. All the other little bulls he lived with would jump and run and butt their heads together. But not Ferdinand. He liked to just sit quietly and smell the flowers. He had a favorite spot out in the pasture under a cork tree. It was his favorite tree, and he would sit in its shade all day and smell the flowers. Sometimes his mother, who was a cow, would worry about him. She was afraid he would be lonesome all by himself. "Why don't you run and play with the other little bulls and skip and butt your head?" she would say, but Ferdinand would shake his head. "I like it better here, where I can sit quietly and smell the flowers." His mother saw that he was not lonesome, and because she was an understanding mother, even though she was a cow, she let him sit there and be happy. As the years went by, Ferdinand grew and grew until he was a very big and strong bull. All the other bulls who had grown up with him in the same pasture would fight each other all day. They would butt each other and stick each other with their horns. What they wanted most of all was to be picked to fight in the bull rings in Madrid. But not Ferdinand. He still liked to just sit quietly under the cork tree and smell the flowers. One day, 5 men came in very funny hats and picked the biggest, fastest, roughest bull to fight the bull fights in Madrid. All the other bulls ran around, snorting and butting and leaping and jumping, so the men would think that they were very, very strong and fierce and pick them. Ferdinand knew that they wouldn't pick him. He didn't care. He went out to his favorite cork tree and sat down. He didn't look where he was sitting, and instead of sitting on a nice, cool grass area in the shade, he sat on a bumblebee. Well, if you were a bumblebee and a bull sat on you, what would you do? You would sting him, and that's just what that bee did to Ferdinand. Wow, did it hurt? Ferdinand jumped with a snort. He ran around, puffing and snorting and butting and pawing the ground as if he were crazy. The 5 men saw him, and they all shouted with joy. Here was the largest and fiercest bull of all, just the one for the bullfights in Madrid. So they took him away for the bullfight that day in a cart. What a day it was. Flags were flying, bands were playing, and all the lovely ladies had flowers in their hair. They had a parade into the bull ring. First came the bandoleros with long, sharp pins and ribbons on them to stick in the bull to make him mad. Next came the picadores, who rode skinny horses, and they had long spears to stick in the bull to make him even madder. Next came the matador, the proudest of all. He thought he was very handsome and bowed to the ladies. He had a red cape and a sword and was supposed to stick the bull last of all. Then came the bull, and you know who that was, don't you? Ferdinand. They called him Ferdinand the Fierce, and the bandoleros were afraid of him, and the picadores were afraid of him, and the matador was scared stiff. Ferdinand ran to the middle of the ring, and everybody shouted and clapped because they thought he was going to fight fiercely and butt and snort and stick his horns around. But not Ferdinand. When he got to the middle of the ring, he saw the flowers and all the lovely ladies' hair, and he just sat down quietly and smelled. He wouldn't fight and be fierce no matter what they did. He just sat and smelled And the bandoleros were mad, and the picadores were madder, and the matador was so mad that he cried because he couldn't show off with his cape and sword. So they had to take Ferdinand home. And for all I know, he is sitting there still under his favorite cork tree, smelling the flowers just quietly. He is very happy. This is one of my favorite books because when I was little, I lived really close to my grandma and grandpa, and we went there 3 or 4 times a week because he had a dairy farm. And every time we went, he would read either Practical Pig or Ferdinand, the story of Ferdinand. And Ferdinand was my favorite. And I learned to love books by sitting and listening to him. All my cousins did. Then, so all of his grandkids, all of his great-grandkids sat at his knee and listened to him read. He wasn't an educated man, but he learned to read, and he taught us to learn to read too. And I always feel calm when I read this book or when I think about Grandpa and the Ferdinand story. And I also found a fact that there was a study at the University of Sussex that says only 6 minutes of reading a day can reduce your stress levels up to 68%. I think reading's worth it.